You know, in order for a business to be successful, all parties involved have to benefit or the relationship will eventually break down. And for many insurance agents, well, it's often just a matter of time until you find yourself in a situation where you feel that your upline partnership is just not working out for you. Now, when that happens, it may be time to cut ties with your current upline and move on, and this can be a simple or a very complicated process depending on who your upline broker FMO is and the carrier or carriers that are involved. So in this video, we're going to cover what that process looks like. We'll even nail down the actual release processes for some of the most commonly sold carriers in the Medicare space. Now, diving right into this, it's important to understand that there are basically two types of release scenarios, a signed release and a self-release. Now, with a signed release, an agent may request to be released from their upline for immediate transfer to a new broker FMO. And you'll need to provide documentation from the current broker FMO in writing showing approval for that contract to be transferred. In most cases, a simple letter on company letterhead from your current broker will suffice as long as it has the appropriate signatures. Although some carriers have a specified document or release form that's designed specifically for this purpose, and in those cases, well, that's the only form they're going to accept. Now, it's also extremely important to understand that under a signed release scenario, the carrier will only accept a signed release from the top level upline in the hierarchy. They will not accept or honor a signed release from a mid-tier broker or FMO. In fact, very few even want documentation that the immediate or mid-tier broker approves. They just want approval from the very top of the hierarchy. And if the top line FMO signs off on the release, well, then the agent's free to transfer to a different broker immediately. For example, as an FMO, we have a direct relationship with the carriers that we broker for. Now, under most circumstances, carriers are going to honor our release request, no questions asked. And we do always work with an open release policy. We'll even put it in writing before you ever contract with us. Now, having said that, we also give our mid-level brokers and recruiters the flexibility to implement their own release guidelines and allow them to release downlines as they see fit, as long as the carrier guidelines are respected. Now, it's very common when I speak with agents, they don't even know who their top line broker is. And in most cases, an agent is only familiar with who their direct upline or broker is. Now, if this applies to you, the good news is you can contact the insurance carrier and they will absolutely tell you who the top line of hierarchy is and who needs to actually sign off on that release form. Now, in the event that the upline doesn't want to give an agent an immediate release, well, then an agent can exercise the self-release process. And this process is going to vary greatly from one carrier to the next, but it's definitely an option, and as a general rule, there's a couple of ways to do it. Now, with some carriers, the agent would need to stop writing business for a certain period of time. It's usually 6 months. And after that 6 months of non-production on that carrier, the agent can then transfer at the end of the time period on their own signature. Now, alternatively, many carriers are going to offer a self-release process that doesn't require you to stop reproducing for 6 months. And this is done by documenting your intent to transfer through the carrier-specific process. Now, in most cases, you'd simply send notification to the carrier's licensing department that you intend to transfer your contract and to whom you intend to transfer it to. The intent to transfer notice documents the day that you requested the transfer and starts the clock on when you'll be able to actualize your release on your own signature. Now, that time frame will vary from one carrier to the next, whether it be 90 days or 180 days, but the good news is, during that time frame, you can continue producing and earning commissions. Now, in the event your current broker or FMO agrees to release you, well, then you don't need to wait the time period out. The carrier will actually transfer your contract immediately. But if your current top-level broker is unwilling to release you, then after the time period expires, well, your transfer will take place. And this is a common process among most of the Medicare Advantage carriers that are in the market. Now, one of the additional caveats here is that when the time comes up for you to exercise the self-release, you can only exercise it as you laid out in your original intent to transfer. You cannot now transfer to a different broker FMO from what you stated in your original intent. You're not required to exercise it, but when the time comes, it has to be exercised exactly like you laid it out when you sent the intent to transfer. Now, that pretty much sums up the transfer process in a nutshell, but real quick, let's take a look at the actual process some of the carriers out there are enforcing. Now, Aetna Medicare Advantage, Anthem, Humana, and United Healthcare all utilize the self-release process through your documenting your intent to transfer. However, while Aetna and Humana have a 90-day wait period, Anthem and UHC have a 180-day wait period before you can actually exercise the self-release. Aetna Medicare Supplement and Medico run under these guidelines as well, but there are some additional considerations that need to be addressed if you have downlines that are contracted with you on that same contract. Now on the flip side, Mutual of Omaha, Cigna, Prosperity Life, well, they all enforce the 6-month non-production period. So either you obtain a written release or you got to spend 6 months not producing in order for that contract to get transferred. So if you have any questions on the process for carriers that I didn't already mention, just give us a call. We'll be happy to help you sort that out. Now, everything else that I've mentioned is all well and good, but there is one final caveat you gotta keep in mind, and it applies to most of the Medicare Advantage carriers, and that, well, it's called a transfer freeze. Many of the Medicare Advantage carriers are going to implement a transfer freeze in the fourth quarter of each year, which prevents an agent from transferring their contract no matter what the release situation is. United Healthcare, Aetna, Humana, those are just a few of the carriers out there that do implement a transfer freeze period. UHC starts their freeze on September 1st, the others October 1st. So what this means is that even if your transfer process is complete, if it's after the cutoff date, well, then your actual transfer won't take place until January 1st. And with that being said, it's important to carefully consider the timing if you're looking to initiate a self-release. In an ideal situation, you'll have any intent to transfers in place and documented somewhere between 3 to 6 months prior to that cutoff date, so that your transfer is in place well before AEP kicks off. Last thing you want is a disruption to your business during what is usually the busiest time of the year. Now, all of the above can certainly be a lot to process, but there's 2 keys to remember, and that's number 1, not all the carriers have the exact same process, so it's worth your time to make sure you understand exactly how any given carrier handles transfers. And if you need some help there, just give one of our marketers a call here. They're seasoned, and they'll help you walk you through it. Secondly, if your business relationship isn't working for you, well, you do have options. And it's a good idea to always understand the release process of your upline broker or FMO before you even work with them, so that you're not surprised when that situation does come up. Ultimately, your success is up to you, but a bad business relationship, well, it can definitely make obtaining that success much, much more difficult. So if you have any questions, or if you'd like to see our release policy in writing, just give us a call. We'd be happy to help you sort it out and get you on the right path to achieving new heights. Until then, good luck and happy selling.